everyone, and welcome back to the Food Tube channel. So here we are making meatballs today. We've got ingredients for two different versions. We've got the Italian, which is the meatballs with ragu, and we've got the Swedish meatballs, which is with like a gravy and is what you often associate with what's served in IKEA. So as always with your homework, here are your questions to write down and answer before you come into lesson to do your practical. Please take some time to really think them through, try and give full sentence answers and explain what you understand and what you mean from these correct terms that you should be using by now. To begin, we need to preheat our oven to 200 degrees Celsius, or for fan ovens, that's 180. And we're going to prep our baking tray, covering it with tin foil so it becomes non-stick and easy to clean. But now let us prepare the onion. Take off the top so that the whole of the body is still intact, and you will need to keep the root intact in particular because that's what prevents us from tearing up. So use the flat surface to steady the onion and cut through in half, revealing the layers on the inside. From the underside, it's really easy to get your thumb in and peel off those outer layers of skin to reveal the bit of onion that you would want to use. Pull those away and do this for both halves. And this saves a lot of faff by trying to do it before you've cut it in half. Use the flat of your hand to clean up your board and remove any debris to keep your board nice and clean and clear. You will use the knife to slice into the onion, cutting it in like segments of orange, but you want to leave about 1 centimetre from the root end so that the body of the onion is all staying together. As I said, this should leave it all so it breaks apart nice and evenly like the segments of an orange. Keep the onion together using a claw grip and as finely as you possibly can dice through so you get nice fine little shards. And they're really small and they'll easily be part of a sauce and not be huge chunks. It can be quite unpleasant to have a huge chunk of onion, especially as a diner as you're eating the sauce. Continue this with the other half of the onion. For the Italian meatballs, you need to keep the two halves of onion separate because we're going to use half for the meatballs themselves and half for the sauce. With the Swedish meatballs, we would just do the whole onion and all of that goes into the meatballs. Sometimes people ask why I choose red onions. I quite like the flavour of a red onion, but there's no particular reason. You are more than welcome to use a white. Now you can see that we've got the garlic cloves and we want a garlic clove crushed to go with each pile of onions for the Italian meatballs. And so that's one, and we'll put that, I follow Jamie Oliver here because there's no need faffing around peeling an onion clove when you can just get the pulp straight from pressing it out. And I use a table knife just to make sure that I've savoured as much as possible. So half of this onion, here we go, into the saucepan ready to get sautéed, and half in with the mince ready to deal with later. So with the Italian meatballs, we are going to prepare the sauce first. So we need to be working on the hob. I'm adding a tablespoon of oil because we need to saute these onions, as I mentioned earlier, which means softening them, and we want them to go slightly transparent. As I said, I've chosen a red onion, so it's not going to be as visible as it would be with a white, but you can see that it will start to soften down and you can feel it as you're working because it will have definitely a more supple texture. We're working on a medium to high heat. I've chosen a 7. So out of 9, that is a nice range to be in. If it starts to develop too much colour too quickly, I'll take it down to a 5. Now, keeping my eye on it as we go, as I said, we're looking to saute and soften the onions so that they are at the correct point and texture and they've started to develop some sweetness so that they really enhance and add a good flavour base to our sauce. See here that there is already a little bit of colour starting to develop, so I'm going to take that down to a heat of 3 to add my tomatoes and to really allow my sauce to get that lovely low, slow heat so it will simmer and reduce down. Before I leave the sauce alone completely, I'm going to add in a couple of other flavours to intensify. So it's a tablespoon of tomato puree, which you can just do straight on the spoon over and then pop in. And that is a real concentrate of tomato, so it's a real kind of intensive boost of flavour. Next will be a teaspoon of oregano, which is a classic herb which is associated with tomatoes and is often used in Italian and American Italian cooking. And so now that is ready to leave on that lovely low heat and have it simmer and reduce down. So reduction, you've heard me use this term a couple of times talking about this. Just want to explain the term in a bit more detail, why and how we actually achieve it. So by using evaporation, as we are simmering the liquid, the water content will heat and begin to steam, which means that we are evaporating that water content, which is a reduction of the water in the dish, results in a deep and much more intensive flavour left behind. Back to our meatballs then. So we are leaving the sauce on the hob and we are mulching together the beef mince, the onion that we already have diced and the garlic that we already prepared. Need to add a crushed oxo cube. You can see me crushing it in the packet, and then I'll rip it open and sprinkle that over the top, and this adds again another intensive flavour which really makes a lovely meaty flavoured meatball. Next to add is a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, which is going to add a little bit of zing to it. It's only a teaspoon, so it won't be a massive impact, but it will be a subtle enhancer again to all those lovely flavours we're developing here. For our mulching, you can see that the best tool here really is your hands, and you get to squeeze through your fingers all of that meat, which really kind of blends all those flavours together and really gets that big impact. Next, we are adding in the basil leaves. You can see that I'm tearing them by hand, again because it releases a lot of the natural fragrance of the leaf and the flavour that we really want to come out and develop here. When your mixture is thoroughly blended, you'll be ready to start shaping your meatballs, and you want them roughly the size of a walnut, which should be your thumb and forefinger touching. So that's the best way to test the size as you wrap your fingers around them. We want approximately 12 from our mixture, so make sure you've got them as even size as possible. This is really going to help your cooking process, as you want all of the meat to cook at the same speed, so you're going to have the right amount of tenderness, you're going to have any undercooked, but you're not going to have any overcooked. So they'll have this lovely texture to them, and they'll be really lovely and supple and even as well, because ultimately you want everyone to have the same portion size. At this phase, we're really relying on pressure to shape and form our meatballs. So by compacting down that meat using your hands, you are kind of forcing it to take its new shape. And being a mince, it is really easy to manipulate. So as the meatball is going to cook, it's going to retain the shape through the coagulation of the proteins. So beef being a protein, it's going to set in this shape and structure that you are introducing at this point. As you get to the final dregs of your mixture, just do a quick double check to make sure that you have got all even sizes. If any are looking slightly under, just see if you can add any more to them. They are ready to bake, so they go into the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. So with meat we will see coagulation, and this is the setting of proteins, which can happen from a heat source or by adding acid to it, something like a lemon juice. Classic examples of where this is evident would be in eggs, meat and poultry. There are a number of ways in which we can see visual signs of the coagulation, and eggs are really obvious in this. A raw egg white is transparent, and the raw egg is also a fluid. When we cook an egg, whether it's boiled, poached or fried, we can see the egg white transform from transparent to white, and the egg's texture changes to a semi-solid state, setting it in its cooked form and retaining a firm texture. This is also seen with red meats, which transform from a red hue to brown, and with chicken, which change from a translucent pink into white. Another visible sign is less notable, but as the proteins coagulate, the structure contracts. As the muscle fibres release moisture, this results in shrinkage. Back to finish the Italian meatballs. The sauce has been left simmering over this time, so our sauce is reduced down and will be ready to serve when the meatballs are cooked. With your meatballs, you need to check they are a golden brown all over the surface. You can turn them over halfway through cooking, or even just turn the tray around to ensure even cooking. And when they are ready, you can take them out and serve them. Before serving the sauce, you will need to season with black pepper and a pinch of salt. Typical accompaniments for serving a Italian meatballs dish would be something like pasta, maybe with cheese on top, or garlic bread as a side dish. Our recipe is a serving for two, so you want about 3 spoonfuls of the tomato sauce, and each serving should have 6 of your meatballs, hence why we were counting out how many we were shaping when we were making them. So the last phase to do is to garnish, and usually something like basil looks really pretty in contrast to the red of the tomato.